Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today we answer the question why most people fear retirement and how to overcome it. Retirement is often painted as the golden years, a time of freedom, relaxation, and enjoying life without stress. And for many of us, retirement is actually a time of fear and uncertainty. But why is that? It's because it's a major life transition. And whenever we have huge transitions, and you tie it with the fact that there's a lot of unknowns about that transition, none of us have retired yet, it then leads to a lot of fear and anxiety about the future. Let's go over five of the most common fears today, and more importantly, what you can do to help overcome those fears. The first and most common fear is the fear of running out of money. When it comes to retirement, we look at the expenses. We're trying to figure out how am I supposed to have money coming in so that I stop working? For many of us, we've been working since a teenager. We've been working literally for decades, and all of a sudden we're supposed to stop working. And that is a really tough time for a lot of us because we know when we're not working, the money doesn't always keep coming in. And I know for me, when I first retired from corporate America to start Obsidian Wisdom, the bills kept coming in even in the months that I was not generating any income for my business. And it definitely leads to a lot of uncertainty. We're just not sure what to do. Because for a lot of us, we're used to grinding that if I need more money, then I'll go get another sale or I'll work extra hours or I'll find a new job that pays a little bit more. That there's this feeling that if I need more, I know how to get it. Or even if it's a gig side job where I know I can work a graveyard shift somewhere, or I could possibly do a Lyft driver or Uber Eats or something like that. When you're retired, we ideally have stopped working. We stopped trading our time for money. And as a result, we should have enough money now to trade it for our time. And the most important thing that I can share with you, at least in my humble opinion, is that the numbers show that 65% of self-made millionaires have at least three streams of income. And so for me, if I'm trying to get over this fear of running out of money, then I'm going to focus on generating enough income streams to replace my one. That if I have one income stream from working and I have three income streams and I retire, wouldn't you feel less stressed about the idea of running out of money in retirement? When you look at the six income streams, for many of us, it comes down to deciding what makes the most sense for us. These income streams are going to be found in three asset classes. It's going to be the stock market, it's going to be your own personal business, or it's going to be from real estate. And you get to decide which of these asset classes I think makes the most sense for me to fund my retirement. I am someone who's been an entrepreneur from a very young age. I've always seen the idea of solving problems for profit as the goal of an entrepreneur. That you want to provide such a great service that people look forward to trading their money for that. And there are many things that you and I may not be the most excited about spending our money on, but we wouldn't trade that item for the money. That we look forward to trading our money. That could be gas in my car tank. I'm not always excited about filling in my tank, but I'm excited when my car turns on and I can drive somewhere because there's gas in it. That at some point, me having the money, it doesn't really provide the value that having gas in my tank would provide. And so we often are making these exchanges. Because I'm an entrepreneur background, I focus a lot on the stock market and having my own business. And the beauty of the stock market is it actually gives us access to all of the streams of income. That I can invest in a business that generates revenue from royalty income, that I can invest in businesses with dividend income, which is investment income. I can invest in bonds from different banks and the government, and that gives me interest income. That you obviously sell the stock and that creates capital gains. And I can invest in a REIT, a real estate investment trust, if I'm looking for rental income. That when you really take a step back and look at the stock market, it gives you the ability to generate multiple streams of income in probably the easiest and most efficient way. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't be someone that says, you know what, Dre, I've made my living in real estate. I'm very comfortable with real estate. I love real estate properties, flipping them, investing, turning them into rentals. I would say, great. We can create three streams from that. You have the capital gain from selling your property, of the rental income that you create. And if you're someone who might be considered like a 1099 employee or you're kind of business for self, then that also generates your profits from that business. Then that is your third stream of income just from real estate by itself. When you focus on finding at least three streams of income, it then gives us the comfort of knowing that retirement is going to be okay. Because realistically, if you're investing about 20% of your salary towards retirement, then that ideally means that you don't need 100% of your salary, that you literally were living off of 80% of your salary because you're investing 20% of it, which for a lot of people means that we don't need as much. Also, many times over our life, we paid off bills, we made better financial decisions, we don't have as much debt. So again, I don't need the same amount of money. And then we haven't even talked about the idea of you moving to somewhere that's a lower cost of living state or a lower cost of living country, but you have a lot of flexibility when it comes to figuring out those three levers, which is how much time do I have before I retire, how much money I want to generate in my retirement, and what my expenses are going to be in that retirement. You get to decide between those three levers. Fear number two is losing our sense of purpose. For many of us, we've been working and that has been our identity. When we go out somewhere and they ask us, hey, what do you do? We're often going to speak from the position of what I do for a living, how I make my income. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a financial planner. I'm someone who works in the school board. I'm an engineer. All of these options are available to you. When you retire, if someone says, hey, what do you do? Some people will say, hey, I'm retired. They may say I'm a retired engineer, where they're sort of holding on to that old title. And it is a transition that we're trying to figure out, what is my new purpose? What is it I'm excited to do every day when I wake up? That for many of us, we're thinking, all right, cool, I'm going to retire. I'll be able to wake up when I want. I'll be able to kind of clean around my house. I'll be able to finish some of those projects. And then the days and the months and the years go by and you finish most of the projects. You've been golfing and you're a phenomenal golfer, right? You don't have any handicap, right? You're phenomenal at golf. Now, some people, that is something that they could do forever, but I find for a lot of people, we do need a little bit more purpose to go with the pleasure. And the book Happiness by Design is one of my favorite books that talks about goals. And it really talks about the idea of happiness is tied to how we spend our time. And so when you're worried about losing your purpose, what we're really saying is, I'm worried about what I'm going to do with my time. And so when I'm thinking about what we want to do with our time and we're having a discussion about creating our own wealth of retirement, I'm often going to say, hey, let's go ahead and just write out some goals, things that we would love to do at our time, places we would like to go, events we'd like to attend, people we'd like to meet, things we want to do, places that we want to support, our overall value system. Start listing off some of these goals. And then normally from there, you'll start listing how long you think it'll take to accomplish it. Is it a 1 year goal, a 3 year goal, a 5 year goal? Is it going to take 10 years to accomplish this goal? We want to list out, I always say shoot for 50. But of course, you just want to start with 10 or 20, that's fine too. But whatever the minimum is, you do have to promise me one thing, is that when you check off one of the things on the list, you add something else. We don't ever want our list to get below whatever that number is. So if you only list 20 goals, when you knock off the first five, add five more. Maintain the 20 goals so that way you're keeping track of you as you change. Realistically, the goals that you have at 60 are going to be different than the goals that you have at 70, are going to be different than the goals you have at 80. I mean, that was true for us when we were younger. The goals that we had at 5 were different than the goal we had at 15, which are different than the goals that we had at 35. That things change as our environment, our situation, and experience changes. And so for me, it's not about only setting your goals in that first year, but it's really going back and allowing yourself to reevaluate what brings you happiness and fulfillment. And so I find that that helps a lot of people. Are talking about the fear of losing our purpose. When you focus on these things, when you're thinking about them all the time, how do I want to spend my time? What do I enjoy doing? Then you have that new identity. You have that new purpose. And when people ask you what you do and who you are, now you have something that's separate from your profession. And you can still say, if you want to, you can still say, I'm a retired engineer, but you can go to the next step and say, I'm actually doing this, or I volunteer here, I speak there, I mentor this, I do all these different things. All those are great things. And sometimes you'll just say, I'm retired. And that's fine too. But we want to be able to say, this is my new identity. This is my new purpose. And it's okay that things are changing, right? Our kids are grown, they're gone, and that feels a little weird. And we retire from work and those relationships are not as strong as they used to be. And that feels a little weird. Ideally, we're able to maintain a lot of those relationships. Go out with them, go on walks with them, go to lunch with them, talk about things other than work, and then allow yourself to build a relationship outside of work so that way you can maintain it once you're done working. And if you're someone who wants a clean break from work, then you want to start looking at different clubs that you can join, different places you can go, new people you can meet, where the thing that you have in common isn't that we work together, it's that we both love this project. We both love to volunteer here. And so, of course, the things we're going to talk about is that new group. Join a fishing group. What do you think we're going to talk about? Fishing. If you join a nonprofit, what are we going to talk about? The service that is needed. If you don't want to talk about work or they only want to talk about work, then allow yourself to build a new relationship in a new environment with a new core thing that we have in common. The third retirement fear is declining health and overall healthcare costs. Healthcare is easily going to be one of the largest expenses that most of us have in retirement. And Fidelity completed a study. They put the numbers together, and it was somewhere around $160,000 over the life of your retirement as an individual, about $350,000 over the life of a couple for retirement. That is what is estimated to be spent on healthcare expenses. So that then naturally leaves an important question. How am I going to fund that? And the answer is normally going to be a health savings account if you have access to a high deductible plan. And the thing that we all love about health savings account, I'm probably not the only one who's told you that, but the money does go in tax deductible, which means it's not counted as income the year that you put the money in. The money grows tax deferred, which means the growth is not taxed as income as it's growing each year. And then as long as you spend it on healthcare expenses, when you take the money out in retirement, that money is taken out tax free. And you heard it right. I'm always saying Uncle Sam wants one bite of the apple, but this is his one exception. And the reason is pretty straightforward. Your healthcare expenses are going to be one of the largest expenses in your retirement. And Uncle Sam is not interested in taking the tax revenue from your healthcare expense account, and then you end up using Medicare or Medicaid to pay for the expenses. It's almost like six in one hand and half a dozen in the other. Ideally, Uncle Sam would like you to pay for your own healthcare expenses. So if you have the money to be able to do that, Uncle Sam said, well, I shouldn't tax it because it's going to be one of your largest expenses. I'd love for you to have enough money set aside for you to be able to pay for your Medicare deductibles and your co-insurance and all those co-pays. I would love for you to be able to have the money to have a therapist if you wanted one where you're able to have the mental health checks. I'd love for you to be able to invest in yourself to where you're able to be proactive in the sense that you see your doctor before there's an issue, that you go on walks and you meditate and you go out in nature and you're very active and you're doing these things, you're building relationships, you're talking with people, you're doing all those little things that we find healthy people do. And the numbers are done, right? We all generally know, you're right, eat more fruits and vegetables, eat less carbs and fats, that you will be a healthier person based off of your diet and just moving around. That we need vitamin D and we can get that just going outside for 20 minutes. That we can go on a 20-minute walk outside in nature, and that shows that it has a much more positive impact on you and I, both from a mental and a physical aspect. And so we all already know what needs to be done. Ultimately, the question becomes, did we plan ahead enough so that we can do these things, affording to go to the doctor and take care of ourselves? And do we make the change in our diet and our exercise? Are we finding fun ways to get out and move around? Do we want to walk a dog? We can get a dog. Do we want to find a friend that all we do is walk? We're walking buddies. Then we could do that. Have we just taken the time to find a way to enjoy being more active? I remember a neighbor I had, he would always go play basketball, and he would play basketball with a group of his friends, and they always stayed active. He would burn hundreds of calories. He would talk about how he didn't like walking or jogging, but when they met up to play basketball, he would get his workout and he felt really good about that. For me and my family, we do a lot of Spartan races. We love the idea of not just running a 5K or a 10K or a marathon. We like the idea of having the obstacles in the race where we get to challenge ourselves and you get to enjoy that aspect of things. And so for us, training and preparing for a Spartan race helps us to stay on track, helps us to get moving and stay active because we've all had our butts kicked out there and we don't want that to happen again. Just find some way for you to enjoy, to gamify the experience of staying in shape and being healthy, and that'll help you remove that fear of your own healthcare expenses and declining health in general. The fourth common fear I see when people are getting ready for retirement has to do with the feeling of being a burden on your family. And whether or not we're talking about preparing ahead of time with long-term care, where you have whole health aid or you have like assisted living or you have a nursing home in general, that whenever we don't feel like we can take care of ourselves, that we have set up something where someone other than our family member comes in. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to pay for a full-blown plan where someone visits us every single day for multiple hours a day. Sometimes it's just giving that break to the family member because ideally our family is excited about being able to help us. Now, if you're single and you don't have the family, then that is definitely something that we want to look at, having the long-term care set in place, where you're living in some sort of a community where it's already accounted for, or you have some emergency contacts where if you don't check in with them on a regular basis, they know that they should check in or reach out to you. Whatever that looks like, we just want to be able to reach out to the right people, set the plan in place that establishes how we're being taken care of, who's going to help us. And if that's family, then so be it. If it's not family, then we should be able to convey that information. We should consider things like a power of attorney, where someone helps makes financial decisions for us if we find ourselves unable to do them ourselves. We might have a health directive plan in place where if we're in the hospital, we've already established who that person is that's going to let our doctor know what we're okay and not okay having. Ideally, we've given that same plan to the doctor, where if something happens to us, we already know everything from the medicine we're allergic to our desires on resuscitating and blood donations, because some people it's a religious thing. There are so many things that we can lay out inside of our health directive plan that we don't have to think about it. It's already set up. And for many of us, our estate has to do with our assets and what we want to be done with them. Do we want to pass them to family or do we want to pass them to a charity? It's something that we want to start handing off now. Is there a way that we're worried about our estate taxes where we can set everything up right now to make sure that we have the most tax efficient strategy in place? Or something that we want to do later and we can pass it off in our will? There are so many ways that we can design our estate where we can move things now or we can move things later. We can have a revocable trust or we can have an irrevocable trust. And hopefully what you're noticing is most of the time we have fears that are around anything. It has to do with us not knowing what's going to happen. It's a fear of the unknown. And because we don't know what's going to happen, we generally will think of worst case scenario. And we're unable to even imagine best case scenario. So we have all these fears, but we don't have a plan in place. Once you start putting a plan in place, and then we talk about the numbers. I'm like, hey, look, 7 out of 10 people 65 and older have a long-term care episode. On average, that costs us about $150,000 to $200,000. We should put this in the plan. Well, would you have a fear about that if it's covered in your plan? And I would say no, because you know what's going to happen. If you're worried about your kids, you're like, oh, Dre, I have this one kid who I'm worried about passing off the wealth. They're going to spend it on the casino. I don't know what to do. Well, we put a trust in place that establishes how they get the money, what they can spend it on, whether there's someone who's in charge of administering the funds in the trust to ensure that they don't make these bad decisions. Or we have the one kid where we're like, man, Dre, they've been married 3 or 4 times. I'm worried about them getting halved and halved and halved on all these divorces. Well, we can set it up in a way where the trust maintains the assets so it wouldn't be counted in the divorce as far as one of their assets. And when we feel uncomfortable is normally a sign that, you know what, there's probably a reason that I feel uncomfortable. Maybe I should look at putting a plan in place. I remember my girls first started talking to me about this idea of them walking to school. And, they're probably like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7, like around the very early goings. And I remember feeling very anxious about that. I was like, oh my gosh, what if someone stops? What if someone tries to kidnap them? What if they get separated and all these different things run in my mind? And I realized I never took the time to train them, to go through this process with them. And so that's what we did. We just walked together for about a month, multiple days a week. We walked out a little further, a little further. I shared with them the things I look for, right? This is what the cars are doing. Keep an eye on the cars coming this direction. If someone comes to you, don't run in the woods because then no one can hear or see you. You actually want to run in the more open areas. So run in the middle of the street. And they'd be like, Dad, well, won't I get run over? Only if they're texting and driving. But if they're not texting and driving, then when you're like waving and stuff, you'll draw so much attention that the person will probably leave. Like we went through all these different strategies. What to do if a dog comes, what to do if your sister here, where do you stop on the side of the road? What direction do you look? I mean, we went through everything. And then when it came time, I had no more anxiety. I had no more fear because I knew that they were prepared. When it comes to your retirement plan, it's that same idea. If I'm uncomfortable, if I'm nervous, I probably haven't prepared well enough. And sometimes that just takes the sitting down with, yours truly. And I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to have a conversation about your retirement. But you just want to be able to look at the numbers, go through that drawer that has everything in there, go through your statements that you stopped opening because the market is going up and down. Start looking at that information so you can put a plan in place. So that way you don't have anxiety about the future. You don't have a fear of retirement. You have a sound, solid plan, and you feel very comfortable about retirement. And if not with me or another professional, it's always good to at least have these conversations with your family. Talk to your family, let them know about the plan, let them know ahead of time, get the responses, the concerns that they have, get all that out of the way. And hopefully we've been able to eliminate a lot of those arguments and a lot of issues that happen in estate planning or even taking care of you, where you want to move and things like that. All that stuff has been laid out and everybody is now on the same page and you have the plan in place. And a lot of times the questions that they ask you will push you into planning even better, where you thought you had everything covered and then your family member asks you something and you're like, wow, that's a really good question. I don't actually have an answer right now. And then we can schedule the next family meeting. We can do it once a month. You can do it once a quarter, but we do want to make sure we're having these discussions and we're all on the same page. And it doesn't have to be a boring, PowerPoint plan meeting. You can have them at a park or the fair. You can do anything. You can make it fun. And it's just at the beginning, almost like, have you ever been to one of those timeshare things where they're like, oh yeah, you can have like 3 days, 4 nights. You just have to agree to sit for 1 hour for a presentation, right? It's almost like that. You're like, hey family, look, we're going to do these things. You only have to agree to sit for 1 hour for the family meeting. Our fifth and final fear about retirement is just boredom and isolation. If all of our friends are tied to our career, once we leave our career, I may not have those same friends. It's almost like when we were in high school, then we had all of our friends, and then when we left high school, we didn't talk to those people as much anymore because the thing that we had in common was high school. And then if we went to college or we had different jobs, we had these friends at these different places. And then once we left those places, a lot of times those relationships stopped as well. So we already are well aware that moving and you're my neighbor and we're not neighbors anymore, that we don't talk as much anymore. That's true for all of us, that there's a convenience factor that is definitely taken into consideration that we're already in the same place. So sure, we can go to lunch together versus I live on this side of town, you live on this side of town. I don't know. Where do we meet? Halfway? How often do you want to do that? I don't know, monthly, quarterly? That there's this easiness that is in establishing and maintaining a relationship with someone that we work with that gets a little bit harder when one of us was retired because we might be thinking, I want to meet during the week, and they may be exhausted during the week. We might want to meet on the weekend, but maybe they have a young family and they still need to spend time with them. Different situations create different environments, which is why it normally makes sense for us if we're trying to get over the fear of boredom and isolation, for us to find new groups of people to hang out with. Whether we want to find them based on a new hobby that we're interested in, it could be painting, it could be gardening, it could be walking, it could be traveling, it could be any of these things. We could join a club that does that thing. And we can spend time with those people, have relationships, go out to eat, discuss things with them, and we can plan the next year every single year. And we can spend monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever it is, we can establish as many of these relationships as we want. And we just discussed how a lot of these relationships are built on convenience. So when we build new relationships with other retired people, doing things that we also want to do in retirement, then we're building new relationships on convenience. Or you could be someone who would consider working part-time in retirement. That I'm not working for money, I have the money, but I'm working for enjoyment, I'm working for purpose, I'm working for fulfillment, I'm working for relationships. That I enjoy having these conversations with people on a regular basis. And as a result, I might as well get paid doing it, right? That's not a bad thing. Why not get paid to be able to have these conversations with people if that's okay and it fits into your schedule? There are sometimes where working part-time, it gives you access to health insurance. And now that big expense we were talking about, now you're able to have a portion of that covered because you have employer-based health insurance, which is pretty nice. You also find another benefit is you spend less of your investable assets. That you're sitting here and you need whatever amount, you have a portion from Social Security, you have a portion from a pension if you have one, you have a portion from real estate, and then you have the portion you take out the stock market. Well, if you have part-time income that you're generating, that's less money that you need to take out from the stock market. In fact, you may be able to just leave that money in there, and now it's continuing to grow. And so it increases the likelihood of you being able to retire successfully for two reasons. One is I'm not touching the money, and that's obviously a great reason. Two is I may not have to touch Social Security either. And so, Social Security increases by about 8% every single year that you wait until you get to 70, that it really can be something that if you're not 100% sure about retirement, it may be a good idea to consider part-time. You don't have the stress of your full-time job, and then you're able to have the flexibility of your time, maybe access to healthcare. Everybody doesn't give it to part-time employees, but I think Starbucks is one of those I know of that gives it to part-time employees. I think they give you a pound of coffee. I don't know if they still do that, but I remember reading that at one point in time. And so you're able to say, all right, I don't want to be bored. All right, that means I need to find things to do with my time. Like, I don't want to be isolated. I don't want to be lonely. So I need to find people to do those things with. And that's pretty straightforward, but it could be friends and family. And I know that there's a study that I had read, and it basically said that you need 50 hours with someone for them to be considered an acquaintance. That if you get over, and I think it's like 150, 200 hours, something like that, that you would consider them a close friend. And so all we have to do to build new, solid, meaningful relationships is to spend more time with people. So what's wrong with that? We got all the time in the world. And if you're someone that's like, you know what, Dre, I really don't want to work part-time. I want to be able to say yay or nay whenever I want to. I don't want any inkling of responsibility tied to someone else scheduling me. Then you might, instead of working part-time, you might volunteer part-time. When you volunteer, you get to say yay or nay. You get to say, yeah, I'll volunteer at that event, or no, I won't be there. You get to decide what days and weeks and months, whatever that schedule looks like, you get to decide how regularly you volunteer, how you'll be used in those services, right? If you want to do a particular thing when you volunteer, you get to tell them that. You just say, no, I don't want to do that. I can appreciate the idea of saying, I want to be able to control my time. And even though it's part-time, I'm giving part of that control away. So I can already acknowledge that. And that's why I do think if you're someone who is worried about boredom and isolation, but you don't need or want any tied commitments, then normally volunteering is a great way to supplement that. Of course, we can obviously join the clubs as we mentioned, but volunteering also can help give that edge because it's a little bit more structured. They are corporations in many ways. It's just they're service driven. So they want to make the money, of course, because you have to run the business, but they're service first. They want to be able to serve the members or the cause. And however that looks, that's what they want to focus on. In closing, hopefully you notice that the fear of retirement is something that's very natural, but it's not something that we have to allow to control our future. All we really have to do is prepare. The key to getting over any fear is preparation. Preparation financially, preparation emotionally, and preparation mentally for retirement. What that looks like, how I'm going to spend my time, how much money I have, how much do I need, my healthcare expenses, how I'm going to maintain my overall health, changes in diet, where I'm living at, who I'm meeting with. All of these things need to be answered. Now, it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly correct because ideally we want to be flexible in our plan that gives us as many options available. As someone who loves playing games, the reason I went online and my wife and kids, they're not up, or I'd have them come in here and they'd probably slap me and tell me I was wrong. But the reason I win a lot of games is because I give myself the most options to win. That if you stop me one way, I've already got three other ways to do it. And the way I often think about it is if you've seen the comic books, that's how Batman is, right? Like the idea is that Batman would win against all the Justice League because he's already established multiple contingency plans for every event possible, right? He is the most prepared superhero that's out there. That's why him as a regular human is able to be on par with these people with super speed and superpowers and strength and teleportation and all that stuff. And he's just a regular human because he's the most prepared. It gives him the edge even when the odds are against him. And that's the same idea with your retirement. Whether the odds are for or against you, the person that is most prepared is going to be the one that takes advantage of every opportunity, every moment, and they're going to have the best retirement. And it's going to be a beautiful, wealthy retirement. If you found value in this video, I simply ask for you to like and subscribe so you can continue receiving valuable insights on how to create your own wealthy retirement system. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.